Hello friends, I'm Kayla. In the name of reading some of the books on my physical TBR this year, I am going to read 8 things that I have owned for many years. So 1 year ago now, I put up this video series where I went through every single book on my physical TBR, all the books that I owned that I hadn't read yet. There are some from the TBR shelf, some from the TBR closet, and I was looking for a way to build a TBR for one standalone video out of this video series, and there were just too many ideas. You all left all of your thoughts. There were so many fantastic concepts. I was looking for something I hadn't quite done before, something that I would still be interested in all of the books, something that would have some type of commentary alongside, and LP commented, I think it would be cool if you read the least read, not lowest rated or lowest number of ratings from Goodreads, and the most read from each genre. Then maybe talk about why you think one book had more attention than the other, if you think it's warranted. So I looked at all the reviews, I compiled the data, and I picked 2 things from each video, the most amount of readers and the least amount of readers from each category. Starting with thrillers, we've got Something in the Water by Catherine Steadman at 170,000 ratings. This is a husband and wife maybe on their honeymoon, and they find something in the water. I don't know what they find. It could be treasure, it could be a dead body. And now they have to keep some type of secret, and I don't know why. This was a nominee for the Goodreads Choice Awards when it came out in 2018. I did a video surrounding it, but it didn't end up in the top 10, so I didn't get to read it. I've had it ever since, and I'm excited to give it a go. With the lowest amount of readers, we have Her 3 Lives by Kate Houlihan with 1,000 ratings. Technically, yes, it does also have a lower average rating, as do most of the books here. Like generally, if it has a higher average rating, more people are reading it. If it has less, not enough people have picked it up. Maybe we're gonna find some hidden gems though. This has to do with a married couple, I believe, and there's a home invasion, and they're both keeping secrets from each other. I've read from Kate Houlihan before and gave her 3 stars, so I'm excited to give her another go. Next, from the video where I combined nonfiction anthologies and short story collections, just because I needed to find ways to connect all of these categories. The highest rated one from that, or sorry, the most amount of readers, I've said highest rated like 5 times and had to refilm, is A Long Way Gone, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier by Ishmael Bia. It has 180,000 readers, and it is about a boy soldier in Sierra Leone. Then with the least amount of readers, we have Stripped to the Bone by Gada Alatrash. This actually has a higher average rating, but only 58 people have clocked it on Goodreads. Logged it on Goodreads. And this is Portraits of Syrian Women. I think there are 7 fictional stories, sorry. Moving on to the ones I know more about. The general fiction video I pulled Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, which currently has 60,000 readers. And this is in Chinatown. I said I know it, but I don't know the year. 1954, during the Red Scare. Paranoia has to do with a family deportation, xenophobia. And then we've got, with 600 readers on Goodreads, The Marvelous by Claire Kahn, which I did read the first chapter of in this video. And it's about this like game, this like rich heiress has this mansion, invites all of these teenagers or young adults to her like manor to compete in this competition. There's $1 million prize. So we'll see how those ones go. And then from my speculative video where I combined a lot of different genres, we ended up with, of course, 100 Years of Solitude, with just under 1 million people who've rated it or read it on Goodreads. And this is magical realism. Following a Family, I also read the first chapter of it in that video. I didn't love it, but I'm sure I will as I continue. And then with the lowest amount of readers, She Leaps Each Time You're Born by Quan Berry with 775. I've read from Quan Berry before. She's actually written one of my all-time favorite books, so I'm excited to get into this one. It's set in Vietnam, and there is a character who has the ability to speak with the dead. So that's my TBR for the next week or 2, or however long it takes me to read through all of these. I'm so excited to compare them and see if there are some ones that I think deserve more hype, or ones that maybe are overhyped. Channel members are going to get a slightly longer extended cut vlog, so if you are one of those lovely besties, click the link down below and switch over to that now. And otherwise, I'll check in with you as soon as I start reading my first book. All right, I just realized it is noon and I haven't had a coffee yet, so we're gonna make it together. Well, I tell you about the first third of The Marvelous because that's how far into it I am, and I am fighting the DNF. Like I said, I already read the first chapter in that video, so I looked back on the footage and I gave it a 7 out of 10 for initial intrigue. So we're following this woman named Jewel, and she invites all of these people on this app. She invented the app. It's like a photo or video sharing kind of TikTok vibe, and some people have gotten famous from it, including one of our main characters. Let me remember who we've even gotten here. Nicole, Luna, and Stella. 1/3 of the way in, I can't explain why I'm getting confused between these characters, but I am. It's like I forget every scene who is who. But they've been invited for this like luxury retreat, and then when they get there, they realize there's gonna be a game, and one of them is gonna leave with a lot of money. Everyone is basically obsessed with Jewel, the person putting it on, and they'll do whatever she wants. So I think it's gonna be this commentary on like parasocial relationships, internet fame, fan culture. And honestly, after reading the writing retreat and how truly unhinged that one was, I just don't know that following these teens, it's not supposed to give the same vibes, but I just don't think it's going to live up to like what I've read recently. Not all YA is meant to transcend age, though some definitely do, and I think The Last Night at the Telegraph Club is going to. So it already just doesn't seem fair to be like comparing them or maybe even rating this by the end, honestly. We'll see how it goes though. We've got a lot of book to still read. These characters just don't feel very real to me. They feel like caricatures that are just meant to forward the plot rather than real people I'm supposed to care about. The writing isn't completely working for me, but we'll see. I just got a package. My mail person just came, and I think I know what this is. So let's see the beautiful green cover. It's Peachy by Camry Kohler. I don't think I saw anybody talk about this. Can't remember where I originally heard about it. I think I just saw the cover and then realized it was a vampire-y story, so I had to have it. It has gotten so hot. I just took Liam to baseball practice, picked him up from school, got groceries. Now I'm home. Sorry, that timing was terrible. Somebody pulled up I needed to talk to. What was I saying? It's hot. It's weird that I was wearing a sweater earlier today, and now my AC is just blowing. It's so sad because I feel like we only really get 1 month of spring here, and now even when I wake up in the morning, like I can't sleep with the windows open because the sun is up at like, I don't know, 4:30. 2/3 of the way through now, and my rice is boiling. I'm really trying to get a bunch done, and I feel like I'm a mess. Hold on. Oh, now I put my other stuff in the oven. I'm making sushi, but like deconstructed sushi. I guess you can go here for a minute. Okay. So The Marvelous is not really going well. I think it's like fine. I'm happy that it exists for the people who it's for. It's reminding me kind of All of This Is True by Ligia de Pennaflor. That's like multiple perspective and just kind of silly, and there's like a bit of a mystery, but it's more so about this kind of friendship group and their dynamics. So if you really liked All This Is True, I'd probably recommend this one. But something that I think I've learned about myself is I like when there's 1, 2, or every POV. I don't really love books where we have a cast of like 8 to 10 characters, but only 3 or 4 get chapters focused on them, because the book is also integrating these little transcripts. So not to spoil the plot of what's going on, but at one point they're being interviewed and you get like all of their interviews and how they handled it differently, like everybody who's at this mansion or whatever you want to call it. So that's definitely a fun element that's breaking up the narrative, but I find myself wanting it to be more like that. I want other journal entries. I want this random perspective. I want the house's perspective. Like, I feel like this should have been, hear me out, fantasy, because it does feel like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory at the beginning, where you're waiting for all of these people to get their invitations to this event and they are getting like the golden ticket essentially. The thing about that book and that movie is it's fun, and then things start to happen that are mysterious or questionable. In this one, it's just that mysterious things are happening and they're solving all of these riddles that you yourself as the reader don't really get to solve because they're unique to the characters in the book. And then there's some mysterious happenings. Again, I don't want to spoil anything. So I feel like I need the fun of it all, and maybe the writing style could have done that, because the plot really isn't. At this point, I don't even feel that I truly understand what the game is, why there's a game, and what's going to be accomplished at the end, and why this is the way we need to get there. I've seen some reviewers compare this to the Inheritance games and say that they thought it was going to be like that and then it wasn't as good. I didn't even really like the Inheritance games. I think I gave it 3 stars. So that's where I'm at. I'll check in with you. It's a quick read, so I'm sure I'll be back swiftly with my final review and rating. In an interesting turn of events, I ended up liking the last third. There were some clever things happening. There were some interesting reveals. And then what the characters decided to do with this information, obviously Jules bringing everyone into this situation, things are not as they seem, like that's the entire premise of a book like this. So just the direction that the book takes and the way that things go down, I thought it was good. However, the first third that I talked about, like at that point I wrote down that I was giving it a 2-star. That middle section was probably honestly like a 1 or a 2. So that makes my rating confusing. My review feels like kind of positive, as in this wasn't unreadable, and acknowledging that I'm coming from a space that this was not written for me. I am not the target demographic. I wouldn't be shouting from the rooftops recommending this, but I would feel comfortable suggesting it to teens, especially younger teens. I still think it could have been better if it was magical. Wouldn't it be cool if these girls evaded this certain situation and they got through all of these riddles and it was like a magical reason, and once they figured out the riddle, that like was the spell that they needed? All in all, I do think I have to give it like a 2.5, which doesn't feel great, but it wasn't a great book, but it is for someone. I think the readership should be higher, but the people who are reading this probably maybe are not in the age range that they would be logging things on Goodreads. Okay, so for you, it's just been a couple seconds. For me, it's been 3 days since I saw you last. I haven't completed a book. I think the first day I was having this just like decision fatigue. I could not decide what order to read these books in, and it was really messing with me. I was like, should I read the other YA next? Should I go back and forth like a low readership, high readership, low readership? That's what felt right. But then I was like, why don't I just read whatever I'm in the mood for, whatever is calling to me? And then none of them were calling to me, so I didn't read for a whole nother day. And I think I'm also gonna wait for the library hold to come in for 100 Years of Solitude and last night the Telegraph Club, because I've heard they're good. So I just decided to pick something at random, and I'm not really liking it, and I've been reading it for a couple days, and there are some books on this list that like I know are going to take me a good amount of time. This isn't the one that I predicted would do that, but now we're on day 3 of reading She Weeps Each Time You're Born by Quan Berry. It's only 260 pages. I'm almost done. I'm like 200 pages in. And I also think I just didn't know what to tell you about this, so just turning on the camera and explaining it, I still can't. I don't know. What I do know is I can tell you why this has a lower readership, at least in my, like, one of the reasons. And I think it's just hard to explain it, and it's hard to pitch it, and it's hard to put it on a list and categorize it as a recommendation. So it probably hasn't gotten, even though it's been in the hands of people who've enjoyed it, it doesn't have the lowest average rating. It's just hard to categorize. I feel like I would put it in the same realm as like This Accident of Being Lost, maybe The Last House on Mango Street, and like Making Love with the Land, or maybe like Billy Ray Belcourt. I really don't know. I'm just trying to think of things that feel like they're vignettes, but they also have this poetic writing style, and they read like a narrative, but they're also poetic, and they're also connected, but they don't really feel connected. Like, this is a novel and it has chapters, but they don't feel like chapters. They feel like something else. It's interesting how much it's reminding me, not of the plot, but of almost the vibes of The Empress of Salt and Fortune. We have a main character named Rabbit in both, and a main character named Chi, and then Kui, and there's a lot of like folklore woven into here. It's set in Vietnam. It's following these characters, so you get a chart of them at the beginning. It's just so unlike We Ride Upon Sticks. like the storytelling and obviously the plot itself, that it just has me struggling to get through. I'm struggling through it. Under a full moon on the banks of the Songma River, a baby girl is pulled out of her dead mother's grave. This is Rabbit, who was born with the ability to speak with the dead. So just singing that, like, I feel like you expect a certain type of story, but it's just not. It's just like ideas. It's thoughts. She will flee from her destroyed village with a makeshift family thrown together by war. As Rabbit channels the voices of the dead, their choruses reconstruct the turbulent history of a nation. So it is teaching you things throughout history, and it's about her carving a place for herself within the true history of Vietnam. I really cannot give you more than the synopsis because I don't think I'm even fully grasping what's going on. There's definitely knowledge that I'm gaining. I don't know. I'm just gonna finish it and then I'll give you a rating, try to explain it better. It's now the end of the day. It took me all day to get through this. I don't know what I'm gonna rate it. A 3 feels too high, a 2 feels harsh. I just have to remember that ratings are subjective. Yeah, this lost me. The plot at times was just incoherent for me to be able to follow. I don't think I can tell you any more about what the actual story is about. I think there's just a lot of references and symbolism, and while I think there is historical knowledge that you gain, I needed much more going into the book to recognize all the things we were referencing. I think there are certain characters who are meant to like represent entire countries, entire political climates, and I found myself wondering so many times, like, is this what she's saying? Like, I understand this kind of concept vaguely in Buddhist teachings, and is this what she's trying to say with this? Because I can connect that dot as far as like cyclical lifeline things, but is that what she's talking about? I think the style was definitely prioritized, which is fine. I've said before, I really tend to like novels written by poets because the language is beautiful. There's so many quotes to highlight just about life and circumstances, but I don't know what the point really was. I wanted to like this so much more, and now I don't know where to go from here. Here's where I'm going from here. I've read 2 books off of my physical TBR, and that means that I'm now allowed to add 2 new books to my physical TBR. That's the rules, right? Some people have been asking me about my TBR closet recently, and my TBR closet is like always the same. The same number of books are always in there. I'm always adding books at the exact same rate that they are leaving and being read. So I think that means I'm allowed to add 2 to my TBR. So I did. This is Swamp Story. I love the cover. And then another animal on the cover is a bear. This one's called Bear With Me Now. It's a romance. This is just like, I think, gonna be a funny story. And then technically I did add a 3rd book to my TBR, but it was a pre-order and it just came in the mail, and it's Yellowface, which I have no idea when I'm gonna get to read. So I think I'm actually gonna move on like today to the next book. We're not gonna do 100 Years of Solitude because I think that'll mess me up reading slump wise. So perhaps we should continue on with the ones that haven't been read a whole bunch, and then I'll have read all of the lowest readerships first, and then the second half of the video is the highest. That'll be fun. I decided to pick up something that is fast-paced and exciting to read, so I'm going with the thriller. And something so interesting is I flipped the very beginning and there's a quote from Gabriel Garcia Marquez right here. And like, I'm about to read him. It says, all human beings have 3 lives: public, private, and secret. So this is titled based off of a quote from him, and also I had no idea that was credited to him, and I heard this concept on TikTok just a couple days ago. Someone was explaining like how you present to the public versus your private life versus the things you keep secret and you would never tell anybody. And I was thinking to myself, like, I am just such an uninteresting person. I must be, because I don't feel like I have those different like identities. But anyway, that was a really fun connection to see. So at the beginning of this book, it opens with a home invasion. She goes upstairs, she's like coming home from wherever, and she's getting ready for them to go out. And her husband, or her fiance, is standing by the door, and he's like, come on, let's go. And then someone knocks on the door, he thinks it's a package. He opens it, and there's two masked men, and they attack him. And then the next chapter is like a flash to when he's coming out of a coma like 6 days later. So I just think it's a really interesting choice, though it's written in dual perspective, that we don't get her chain of events, like what happened when she discovered him, when the masked men came and confronted her. Did that happen? We don't know. Now I'm 8 chapters in, and her fiance has come home. She is trying to make like a comfortable space for him. He's also, I think, 20 or 30 years her senior, and he has an ex-wife, or they're in the process of getting divorced, and adult children, and there's some tension involved. And then with Jade, our main character, her 3 lives are basically like what she's putting on the internet, because she's a social media influencer. It just told me she makes $6,000 a month on her blog, so good for her. And when her fiance comes home, he is setting up the house in a way that is like super secure. So he wants to put all these cameras in place, and now he's watching everything that she does. And she gets a letter, and she ends up fleeing the house. So now we know like her public life, and how it was weird because she wanted to keep posting when he was in the hospital, because she had to keep up with like her sponsorships and stuff, and people are judging her for that. And then her personal life is what her fiance knows, and then her private secret, I can't remember now. Her secret life is whatever happened before she met this man, because someone is sending her letters, like something bad happened, she did something, or something happened with her family, that now maybe someone is after her, and her fiance is now kind of like keeping his eye on her to figure out if he can find out what's going on, who these people were. We're led to assume that these two situations are connected. Maybe they're not. I really like the writing and the pace, so hopefully the plot stays good and there is like reveals that I find surprising, and I'm excited to keep reading. Well, I was looking for a fast-paced thriller. I don't think I got it. I'm halfway through, and it's taking me all day to get here. It's just a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of people talking about how they feel and how they feel unsafe and insecure. And to me, the stakes just feel low. Like if someone comes to the house, which it doesn't feel like they're going to, because wouldn't they have done it sooner? Like time is passing. I'm just waiting for like an event. But if people come to the house, like they're relatively safe. If whoever keeps sending her these mysterious notes, she's gonna keep reading them, and I'm gonna keep reading them. If they find out something about each other and their marriage falls apart, like I think they'll both be fine. And the mystery itself of like who the people are who did this, it doesn't really matter. Like to me as the reader, that being the mystery isn't interesting because it doesn't change how the story is gonna go. So come morning, I'll check back in, see if anything has happened and has made me excited and interested. This video is definitely making me a bit sad because I haven't found like a diamond in the rough. I haven't found anything to recommend broadly that I feel like hasn't gotten the hype that it deserves, because I have another 3 here, which is the same rating I gave her other book. And I think this is an author whose writing doesn't bother me, so I would probably read again, with the assumption that when you write more mystery and thriller type books, that the actual plotting of the mystery gets more sophisticated the more you write. There just wasn't enough going on in here that was interesting if you aren't loving the characters or the style. I don't read a lot of like domestic husband-wife mysteries nowadays, probably because more often than not they are like 2 or 3 stars. I would put this one at the same level as this stack of ones that I think are all or mostly like getting into a new marriage, getting a new family, those kind of vibes. And actually the 2 at the bottom, this one I'm rating higher than those. So do I think that this should have more readers? Generally, yes, because it is better than other mysteries with the same kind of plot that have a lot more readers, and I didn't like those ones I've pretty much covered the whole plot at this point. Not really much went on outside of the questions we already had. I want to see if I took any notes. My main critique was there were a lot of assumptions made. And when there's a mystery book and everybody's making all of these assumptions and you as the reader know that they're going to pan out to be incorrect, that's a frustrating reading experience. So we have this couple, and each of them is assuming a lot of things about each other, about other people, and every single one of the things isn't going to pan out because we know that the mystery isn't going to be solved until like the last page. So there's a way to introduce multiple mysteries where there are many things we're trying to figure out that can distract you from just being like, well, that's not going to be it. That's not going to be it, because why would you tell me that that's the answer halfway through the book? Like, obviously this coffee date she's about to go on where she thinks someone's about to reveal this, they're not actually going to reveal that, because then what on earth is happening here? There were definitely things to enjoy about it, and I found some aspects a little bit surprising. I wouldn't say there's any big plot twists, any big reveals that would make people put it on some kind of list that's like must-read thrillers. It's just one of your average kind of beach read mysteries that you take on vacation and you read in a day and you never really think about again. So those ones perhaps don't get the type of hype that the big twist and turn ones kind of do. So unfortunately, that's where I'm at, and I'm gonna start my last low readership today, right now. Next, let's go. Well, I guess let's just call it I'm in my flop era. In no world did I think that I would be starting this video with 4 leaning negative book reviews, but that's the position I put myself in, and that it doesn't feel good. Is it me? Is it the books? I don't know. Let me explain, because this is not a bad book. It's not that these portraits of Syrian women aren't moving. It's not that anything that she shared isn't educational. There were no faults with these stories, and the real people who, I mean, you would say inspired this, but she says in the preface that everything in here is her opinion and her thoughts and came from her own mind, and she doesn't want anyone to feel like this is meant to represent like a group of people or anything. So they're not inspired by true stories, but I mean the ideas are, I'm sure, and the people that Ghada Alatrash has come into contact with, family members, her own experiences, just people that she knows. I just think this should have been nonfiction. As an experience, as a book, it was just kind of messy. Each story starts out with a poem that, I don't know, represents the story. Excerpts from other people's poems that she slipped in there. So it's just kind of inconsistent in that way. And then we have a story about a woman. And it's more so about perspectives and thoughts and musings. So it'll be like, Zara is a Syrian woman. She lives in Syria. It's very like factual. And she is watching movies from America, and she finds it just so strange that she will watch a movie and like The Bodyguard, and it'll seem like there is no, like everyone is open in America. There's no racial tension. Everybody is free to be with who they want to be. But then in the same, you know, breath, there is racial tension and police brutality, and it's just confusing to witness. And then alongside that, there's a lot of footnotes. Some of the footnotes take up almost the same amount as the story itself, just explaining, like, most of them are name origins, or like explaining groups of people, religions and stuff. And I just think that should have been a glossary. I just feel like it should have been nonfiction, because it's so many musings. It's just so many, this person was thinking about this, how strange this is, how sad this is, and everything that she's saying is strange and sad, and everything makes sense, but they seem to just be coming from her. And I think this could have been so strong and educational and personal if it was just nonfiction, and it was like, here are all these issues going down, here's how we got here, here's the things that people are struggling with, and here's light shed on this situation that other people may not know about, and also here's the origin of this name, and here's an explanation of all of these terms. Because Zara's story itself only takes up like 2 of the 10 pages. It's more about the things that she is thinking about the world. But then also at the end of each one is this section that says where that woman is now. So it'll be like many women who are 35 in Syria, Zara will likely not be married until she finds this opportunity and this happens. And then some of them sound very factual, like over the next 10 years, their love gave birth to a garden of exotic flowers in whose shade they lay together and embrace each time they met. And it's like just as poetic as the story was itself, but then feels like it is a reflection of the real life story it was based on, but it's not. Abu and live on their dream of returning to their beloved homeland in Syria, but until this dream comes true, both of them wake every morning to their herbs and nourish their little garden in Houston wholeheartedly. They continue to do this, their plans are to do this, and it just feels like if you're going to write an epilogue for each one of them, just put it in the story itself, because none of the stories just feel like they are one scene. They are sometimes that person's life story, and you could have included that in it. It's definitely highlighting horrific things, and that's so important. There are stories of imprisonment and abuse and the treatment. One of them was the treatment of Syrian people on flights post 9/11. So the settings are multiple different countries and multiple different fictional women that she has created. Conversations are obviously so important. I just don't think that this worked as an experience. I don't think I'm gonna rate it. This was not for me. I feel really awful about that. So I'm gonna move on to the next thing. All right, so this vlog has not been going the way that I want it to as far as the books I've been reading, and also just like interesting things going on and footage. I thought maybe we'd go out and do some stuff. Rob's on call this weekend, so we can't go too far, but I was thinking like going to the park, going to the beach, hanging out outside. It would be beautiful. Forgetting that May Long weekend is the rainiest weekend of the entire year, every single year. So I haven't been getting out much, and that means I don't really have that much interesting to show you and to share, and I just need the vlog to turn around. It's not going to turn around as far as energy, so maybe it'll turn around for books. Today I'm going to do nothing except some laundry, some non-YouTube related work, and then just like lying in my bed. It looks very appealing right now as the rain is coming down. I'm going to read 3 books. That's what I'm doing today. This vlog is supposed to go up in a couple days, so I also just like need to get through the books. I've been watching a lot of hockey lately, and with the overtimes going on, it's just been hours and hours of my day watching hockey. There is more hockey today. There also may be baseball. I don't know if Liam's gonna have practice today, so maybe I'll get outside. I don't know. I've already started with A Long Way Gone, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier, so let's talk about this one. When I say let's talk about it, I don't have much to say because I just started it. At the age of 12, Ishmael Bia fled attacking rebels in Sierra Leone and wandered a land rendered unrecognizable by violence. By 13, he'd been picked up by the government army, and Bia, at his heart a gentle boy, found that he was capable of truly terrible acts. At 16, he was removed from fighting by UNICEF. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Already the events that he's gone through as a child, the things he's had to witness, have been horrific. So I feel like I might go back and forth between this and the thriller that I have. I'm not sure yet. I'll read a couple more chapters in a bit and check in with you about how I'm feeling. Book number 1 of the day done. I feel like this makes sense why it has a high readership. It has the right amount of education meets like personal experience. I think a lot of people could gain a lot from this. I would pretty broadly recommend it. Even outside of the specific war that we're talking about in here, in the specific country we're talking about, there's a lot you can gain as far as how recruitment goes, how people are taken advantage of. So he gets caught up in this situation because he's trying to avoid certain things, and because of all the conflict going on, the village that he's living in convinces everybody there like how much fear they should have. They should fear these other people who are coming in. So once they start with those conversations, it's easy to transition into, okay, well, you should just go kill all of these people. There's a lot of fear involved. If you don't participate in these acts, these are the terrible things that are going to happen to you, especially when you're at such a young age, like 11, 12, 13. You're so impressionable. And then it goes through all of the time he spent when he was handed a gun for the first time and given drugs, and all of these children were just drugged up and convinced of murder. And then you're also jumping forward in time, and a good chunk of this takes place kind of after the fact, trying to recover memories from before. and trying to recover from addiction and the mental health effects that have gone on because of all of these things, and also the groups of people who have helped him and who've brought him into a safer space. The way that he was able to be in a place to like speak at the UN and write a book, the various experiences that also led him to these passions that he has. He was performing like Shakespeare to the soldiers back in the day because everyone was so proud of how well he could read and perform, and the way he kept his passions through all these horrific experiences. It was just a really powerful story, while there's also a lot of learnings to be gained. So I'm now moving on to book number 2 of the day. This, like I told you, I have no idea what it's really about besides being on this honeymoon. And we're following a husband and wife in Bora Bora and the thing that they find in the water. All right, so I did get caught in the rain, but it's okay because I have to wash my hair tonight anyway, and this is now giving me a good reason to. Here's why I think this has a really high readership and an average to low rating. It's because this is a pretty divisive one. I feel like, without even looking at the reviews, because I'm a third of the way in and we only just got them like finding the thing and the mystery just beginning. So I've already read 150 pages before anything really kicks off. So if you don't like the slow burn mystery, this one isn't gonna work for you. But for the people who don't mind that, they've probably pushed this a lot. And so a lot of people have picked it up, because I can also see the passion for it, because I love it so far. I think it's really interesting. I think the characters are the type that would probably drive a lot of people crazy. It's kind of got Finley Donovan vibes, that you can't stand what these people are doing. Like, the decisions people are making are not very informed, and it's a little bit wacky. Unlike Finley Donovan, it's not like fun, silly wacky. It's a more intense plot for sure, but it is just kind of ridiculous, which is fun. And the intro to the whole book, the prologue or whatever it was, or I guess just the first chapter, introduces a different kind of mystery that I'm now going to be wondering about, I'm assuming, for hundreds of pages until it ends. Just the intro and where you know these characters to be days, weeks from now, it has me with a lot of questions, like how we got here. I'm having a great time, and I think it's only gonna get wilder from here. I kind of wish I had read this earlier when the hype was really at its peak. The door was left slightly
open.
Ajar!
I've heard that word, but I never knew that. Ajar.
Yeah. Hello, Liam's doing the mini crossword. I'm loving this. I just have to let you know, I wish this was one of my book club picks. If you have a mystery book club, you should pick it. There's so many conversations you could have about what's going on. I wouldn't say it's like the most shocking reveals ever, because the direction is clear-ish, but there have been some surprising elements. I'm a little past the halfway point. I was having a great time, like really a fantastic time.
Command or caps lock? Key?
Yeah! Just lying in my bed, eating a Freezy, playing the crossword. So obviously the number one reason this has a really high readership is because it's got the Reese's Book Club sticker on it. It was part of her book club. It has her endorsement, so a lot of people have picked it up and obviously enjoyed it. And I have realized recently that Reese and my tastes do align sometimes, or not even just sometimes, like more often than not. And this one's no different. I am going back and forth with my rating because I don't know that this feels like a 5-star thriller, but it's damn close. Like, I could call it a 5 and be okay with that. I think it's a 4.5, which is obviously a pretty big win for me. I'm really glad that I read it. I'm glad that I liked it. It was definitely messy and silly and convoluted and convenient. So I would say, like, Finley Donovan, if you liked The Writing Retreat, if you like the show Good Girls, which I really do, and if you like other Reese's Book Club selections, honestly, where she has very clear intent and messaging behind the things that she picks, this one totally lines up with that. With how slow moving this was, I honestly just wasn't expecting it to really go there. but it did. And that makes me so excited to read The Family Game, which is by the same author, that I soft DNF'd earlier this year because it was just a little uninteresting of a kickoff. Like the prologue, much like this one, really like hit it out of the park, and then the first chapter just wasn't super interesting. So I was like, okay, well, this is going to be a little bit dull. Maybe it's not going to be my thing, because I like a slow moving mystery as long as it gets away from the slowness as we go through it. I know I'm talking a lot and it has nothing to do with the plot because I can't tell you anything about something in the water. I can't tell you what was in the water. I can't tell you what they do once they discover it. I can't tell you the mysteries we're solving. I can't tell you all the key players. Like, as I read less and less domestic husband and wife kind of suspense books, I also don't want it to come across like this one subverts a lot of stuff or it's totally outside the box. And that's why I loved it, because it does follow a traditional structure. I don't think it does anything that shocking, though there were definitely plot points that I was surprised by and that I got to enjoy creating my own theories about. So like I said, really good for a book club, I think, because you can discuss like a lot of morality things and there are so many very clear themes. I think one thing I could talk about is that our main character, Erin, is making a documentary, which isn't something that I talked about in the pitch because I didn't really read this thoroughly, but she is meeting with these people who are just getting out of prison and she's creating a documentary around them. So there's this commentary on incarceration and also moral dilemmas, because she herself is obviously getting caught up in some type of mystery crime herself. And it's like, now that she's in maybe a similar situation, does it color her perspective on what other people have been through? I thought it was great. I really wouldn't hesitate to recommend this if you like the vibes of the things that I talked about. The sun has now set and I'm gonna start my third book of the day. For some reason, I'm confident I can still pull this off. Even though it's 400 pages, but I have the audiobook. I have it at a comfortable like 2.3 right now, which I think makes it like 4 hours long. So either I'll check in with you or I won't because I fell asleep. I don't know. Well, I did not in fact finish it, but it's midnight and I should probably go to bed. I might read a little bit more as I'm falling asleep, but the audiobook says I have gotten to 70% of the way in. I really like the audiobook. I'm listening to it exclusively that way, but there is pages that I am referencing because occasionally there's little timeline moments that if you have the audiobook, it also comes with a PDF, which is great. So it's like this, and it'll kind of cover a couple years at a time. We're following our main character, Lily, in 1950 something in San Francisco, and she is Chinese American and just discovering her like queer identity. The Telegraph Club is a lesbian bar, and she meets different people there. She gets, you know, introduced to an entire group of people who make her feel seen for the first time. She doesn't really identify as anything specific from the beginning, but is just coming to understand like her attraction to who her attraction is to. And I think other people around her are starting to realize that as well, because they'll kind of challenge her and have certain questions for her, like, why don't you want to go to the dance with this boy? And who do you find the most attractive from this group? And like, what would you rate this guy? It kicks off with a boy asking her to go to a dance and she just feels nothing but fear. And then she gets involved with this new friendship that really opens her eyes to things. And I think that's going to lead to a romantic relationship. So there's obviously a lot of representation in here. And it's also just representation of that time in high school that's so awkward feeling when your friendships are shifting. So she has friends who have certain expectations of her and she's not meeting them. She's considering like, should we be friends? Do we even have anything in common at this point? Like, would I be abandoning them if I started this new friendship with this new girl? But then also we get all of this historical information from the 50s and the Red Scare paranoia and all of the deportation going on. Her father is a doctor and there's all of these also conversations about morality and the reason why he might be deported, his own personal ethics. And then in amongst Lily's chapters, we get these flashbacks to, it seems like a different kind of person in her life. There are, I think, 6 or 7 parts to this book following Lily. And then each one is like bookended by these flashbacks to like her parents and various other family members, what they went through, how they became who they are, and how Lily's life, you know, started. That's definitely a little bit more than I was expecting, especially because it's not in the synopsis that we're getting all of these other characters. At this point, I feel a lot of joy. It's like this coming of age story where, you know, you always want your characters to come into their own, find their identity, feel support and love, but also obviously at this time and why this book was written, there's a lot of fear there, like for us as the reader, what it's building to, her various comings out and how they go, and also the threat looming of people coming into these bars that she's frequently and hurting people. She's already experiencing discrimination and racism and xenophobia in her everyday life. And now it's like, how do I be proud and queer, if that's even what I am, figuring all of that out and like how to do it publicly, because there is so much valid fear of another identity that more people have reasons in their mind to cause you harm. I understand why it has a lot of readers, and of all the Melinda Lowe, why this one really took off. It feels like it's written by a very seasoned author. I've read a couple things from her before, and this is definitely the standout. I have lost the little thing that attaches my camera to my tripod, so we're going handheld. I swear I lose this thing, misplace it at least twice a day. It's a real problem. I finished last night the Telegraph Club. I went on a walk this morning, the audiobook, finished it off, and it was really good. I feel like I would give it a 4. It's like the exact story I was expecting, has the exact impact I was expecting. I think it's obviously a really important book to exist. I feel like a lot of the queer books that I was reading in like the early 2010s, when they became a lot more prevalent in all age ranges, they were very important and intense and heavy. And now I think a lot of us are reading a lot like lighter queer stories because there are more of them like to exist. And that's so great to see queer rom-coms and just queer characters in like mystery books and fantasy and sci-fi and all of that. So I think I don't see as much intense LGBTQIA plus content being talked about, but I know that this was one of them that came up a lot. It's obviously won a lot of awards. You can see them all on the cover. So that's great that we're still getting so many different types of queer representation. The important stories are still being told, the ones that are going to make a really big impact, the ones that are giving historical information, painting an idea of what the world looked like at this time, and have a lot of like research involved with them. So I respect this book a lot. This is pretty much at the top of my list of things that I would recommend broadly for anybody who wants it. And now, moving on to my final book. I am worried about it. I read the first chapter of 100 Years of Solitude in my trying the first chapter of every book on my TBR. And I think I gave it like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. I love magical realism, and this is the kind of book that I know once I've read it, I will appreciate having this knowledge base, this like appreciation for something at the start of a genre that's likely inspired so many other things that I've read and loved over the years. I just remember feeling a little bit lost and confused, which is totally okay because surrealist kind of books will do that to you. So I'm gonna get a good couple chapters in, and then I'll check in and let you know what I have learned, where I'm standing steady, because I hope that that's the position that I'm in. So I've made it to, I think, 160 pages into this. I'm still waiting for my audiobook hold to come in. It says I have like 3 weeks to wait, but there's only one person ahead of me, so it really just takes that one person to skip and then it'll come to me. So maybe that'll happen. I'm manifesting it today, tomorrow. I'm enjoying it. It is very dense, and I think I could really enjoy it being told to me. So on that note, I don't know how to pronounce everything properly, but we're following the Buendia family, maybe, in the mythical town of Macondo, I think. And this just has a lot of elements of books a lot of elements I love. Sorry, it's midnight. Like if we went to my list that I made of all of my favorite things in books, so many are in here. There is the cyclical nature. We're in this like small family, small town, and it's like life and memory and future is all kind of existing at the same time. And that's really represented by a whole bunch of characters having the same names. There's a lot of repetition in here, like even the word solitude, the word later is constantly coming up. Like every single page, it feels like later this would happen. Later, like moving forward, a couple years later, here's what's going on. But we're never really in that time. It's just talking about the past and talking about the future as if it's now. Also, just the themes of being really insular is something that I love. I like how they're searching for certain things, but they're stuck where they are and they can't necessarily find what they're looking for. I don't know if at this point in this book being out, if I should stay like spoiler free or what people know about the story. I mean, I barely know the story. I'm only, what is that, a third of the way in? Something else I love is stories of obsession, and there's definitely some obsessive tendencies with members of this family, certain relationships. There's a character who is obsessed with eating dirt, so that's interesting. And then I also like, you know, apocalyptic kind of world-ending plague stories. That is an element of this. It's not like the world is ending, but there is this plague that has to do with sleep. And it also comes, memory comes into that. I feel myself getting a little bit lost, and I don't know if it's because I'm tired or because it's just generally a kind of messy book that, like, if I need to know something, hopefully it'll be told to me, but otherwise it's just like, I'm not really connecting all of these dots and like which character is which, because there's a bunch with the same name. I think it's supposed to be intentionally a fever dream almost, where I don't know what the plot is. I don't know what's important for me to know. I don't know what's real and what's not, but it's like, that's also the point, that like magical realism is oftentimes almost a reinterpretation of what the world could look like if certain things had or hadn't happened. Read colonization. It's definitely full of beautiful language. It's this melding of reality and dreams, but are there dreams because people can't actually sleep? So like, what are they? People are hunting for these dreams. I think it's good, but this is definitely going to take me a couple more days. So I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, so I'm reading some more in between periods of the Panthers Hurricanes game. I thought this was going to be the last of their series, but maybe not, because it's very physical. Carolina's playing quite the game. I don't know that I have a real update, but that's how far into it I am. There's like death and war and intense things going on, but the most impactful scene for me was this woman named Remedios. There's a little character chart at the beginning. I think we have 3 or 4 characters named Remedios. This one is called Remedios the Beauty, just to distinguish who is who. And she's basically just so beautiful, and every man wants to be with her. So Remedios is taking a bath, and there's this guy who's trying to seduce her, and he's like, can I soap you up? And she says no, and then he just sits there and watches her bathe, and then he asks to marry her, and she's like, I would never marry a man who wastes an hour of his life and skips lunch just to watch a woman bathe. And I feel like that's really boss bitch energy. That last chapter, it was fucked up. I'm gonna have to sleep on my rating. So I think my rating of this one is gonna land at a 4 point something, or 4.25. It was interesting and had beautiful language. I did find parts of it a little boring. I think upon reread, I could give it a 5, honestly. There were some like uncomfortable things like relationships and what have you, but it's definitely something that I would want to reread, which is not the feeling that I thought I would leave having with this. It's definitely not something that you can read passively. Like, this took all the brain power that I had for 3 days. So as predicted, I feel like I'm kind of entering a slump. I feel like I've kind of been in a slump all month. Like, I haven't had a 5-star. I haven't had the most like energy this month. And I do think that reading a bunch of non-hits in a row was not good for me. So here's kind of my ranking from 2 stars all the way up to 4 point something. At the end of these reading experience, I always assume or think that there's gonna be a takeaway at the end to share, and there never is. I think, yeah, we could look at these and say they have the highest readership and I liked them more than the ones with the lower readership, but that's not true across the board. Like, some of the most popular books that I've ever read had the most readerships I hated. So if you take a sample size of 8 books, you can prove anything. Books that haven't had a lot of readers are terrible. Books that have a lot of readers are awesome. Like, that's obviously not true, but it was true in this case. I think every single book has an audience, deserves to be read, and I wish I had just like huge glowing reviews to share, but hopefully my next vlog will be a little more enthusiastic. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.